The second day of the government shutdown brought clarity on one point. Donald Trump does not see the lapse in funding as a crisis, but as an opportunity.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like. We can do things medically and other ways, including benefits.
Today, Trump openly celebrated the shutdown as an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate his agenda of firing federal workers, gutting government agencies, and punishing Democratic-led states. Trump revealed on Truth Social that he was meeting with Russell Vought, his budget chief and a central architect of Project 2025, the far-right Christian nationalist blueprint for dismantling large parts of the federal government. "I have a meeting today with Russ Vought, he of Project 2025 fame," Trump wrote, saying they would discuss which Democrat agencies to target and whether cuts should be temporary or permanent. "I can't believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity," Trump wrote. The shutdown began just after midnight on Wednesday, when Democrats refused to back Republicans' rollbacks and restrictions tied to federal health care programs. Democrats are pushing to protect existing coverage and funding for millions of Americans, not for illegals, as Trump claims. This talking point is entirely false. Federal law bars undocumented immigrants from programs like Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act marketplace. Rather than seek compromise, Trump and Vought use the impasse as justification for sweeping actions aimed at slashing Democratic priorities. Vought announced that $18 billion in federal funding for infrastructure projects in New York, including the 2nd Avenue subway and the Hudson River Rail Tunnel, had been frozen over what he called unconstitutional DEI principles. He also halted $8 billion in funding earmarked for climate and energy programs in 16 Democratic-led states, dismissing it as Green New Scam funding. The moves triggered outrage from Democratic leaders. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, both New Yorkers, accused Trump of using working people as collateral damage in his endless campaign of chaos and revenge. California Representative Adam Schiff called the cuts illegal, while Oregon Senator Ron Wyden warned they would raise utility bills nationwide. Whilst past shutdowns have led to furloughs and back pay, the Trump regime is taking a more aggressive stance. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt warned that layoffs are imminent, signaling permanent job cuts rather than temporary furloughs. Senate Appropriations Chair Patty Murray blasted the announcement, saying Trump was treating federal workers like pawns in his political battles. Even some Republicans voiced discomfort. North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer warned against squandering moral high ground by turning the shutdown into a vehicle for mass firings. Yet Trump and his allies show no signs of pulling back, framing the downsizing of federal agencies as a core achievement rather than collateral fallout. The authoritarian regime has also taken unprecedented steps to weaponize the shutdown narrative itself. Federal agencies have been instructed to post messages on their websites and in employee auto-replies blaming Democrats for the shutdown. Some sites, including the Treasury Department and Department of Agriculture, use language echoing Trump's campaign rhetoric and official talking points, falsely accusing radical left Democrats of deliberately closing the government. Employees at the Department of Education reported that their out-of-office messages were altered without their consent to include partisan blame directed at Democrats. Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin, a constitutional lawyer, denounced the tactic as a naked violation of the Hatch Act, which prohibits federal employees from engaging in partisan political activity. Non-partisan watchdogs also sounded the alarm. Donald Sherman of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington called the government's messaging extraordinarily irresponsible and inappropriate, warning that it undermines public trust at a time when Americans need clear, factual information about disrupted services. Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group, has already filed a Hatch Act complaint against the Small Business Administration for partisan shutdown messaging on its website. On Capitol Hill, neither party has shown sign of retreat. House Speaker Mike Johnson insisted he had nothing to negotiate, saying Democrats must accept the Republican funding proposal, which runs through November 21st. But the bill cannot advance in the Senate without Democratic votes, and talks there remain stalled. For critics, Trump's handling of the shutdown fits a broader pattern, treating the machinery of government not as a neutral tool of service, but as a weapon for political retribution. The freeze on infrastructure and climate funds directly targets Democratic states. The threats of layoffs reframes civil servants as expendable in Trump's war against the federal bureaucracy. And the partisan messaging blasted through government channels turns taxpayer-funded institutions into extensions of his political campaign. Shutdowns are never without consequences, but this one appears designed less to force a budget compromise than to advance Trump's ideological project of shrinking government and punishing political opponents. By openly celebrating the shutdown as a chance to pursue mass layoffs and permanent funding cuts, Trump has broken with the traditional framing of these moments as failures of governance. Instead, he has embraced the crisis as strategy, wielding the disruption as both a campaign message and a governing philosophy. For millions of Americans who rely on government services and for the federal workers whose livelihoods are now on the line, the stakes are not abstract. Trump may also be positioning the shutdown as a future political alibi. During his first term, he repeatedly blamed the COVID-19 pandemic for derailing what he cast as an economic golden age under his leadership. Now, allies suggest he could deploy a similar tactic, using the self-inflicted damage of the shutdown as an excuse for any faltering in his growth and jobs agenda. By framing democratic resistance as the obstacle to prosperity, Trump sets the stage to both justify short-term economic pain and reinforce his claim that only his agenda, if fully unleashed, can restore American greatness. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.